locals are telling us that around March 6th, there were civilians, families gathered in this neighborhood that were trying to get out of Sumy through alleged humanitarian corridors. You can see the cleanup is still ongoing, even though the attack happened on March 6th, which was a long time ago at the beginning of the Russian invasion. The people who were gathered here were trying to get out of Sumy through a humanitarian corridor, which was going right along this street here, the main street out of Sumy. But what you're seeing now is the aftermath of an airstrike that killed 21 people, including women and children. They were gathered here to get to safety, but they weren't able to. Unfortunately, for many Ukrainians all across the country, that's what these humanitarian corridors represent. Ukrainian officials are saying that they need guarantees, security guarantees, from the Russian side to ensure that people can get out safely from areas where ongoing conflicts are happening. However, what we're seeing here is an absolute catastrophe. These homes have been completely destroyed. Here in this spot, there's actually supposed to be a home there, but now it's completely annihilated. They've been cleaning up this place for the last several weeks, but despite the cleanup, people are very aware of the threat that Russia continues to pose. 1 hour from here is the Russian border. There continues to be an aerial threat to Sumy and areas around Sumy, and that's keeping people's tensions very high here in eastern Ukraine. Attacks are continuing around the country, especially focused on the eastern parts of the country in Donbas and Luhansk regions. There are reported attacks as well as in Kharkiv. The Russian Ministry of Defense says that it's targeted Ukrainian military depots and other Ukrainian infrastructure, especially around the Kharkiv. There are 4 targets, and there were 5 other targets in other parts of the country, including a place around Dnipro, a train station. According to Ukrainian sources, a train station and several buildings around that train station were targeted. These are the kinds of attacks we've seen become common over the last 2 weeks. Russian forces targeting critical infrastructure, including fuel depots, transportation infrastructure, food depots, and even humanitarian corridors, especially focused in the eastern and southern parts of the country. In Mariupol, the president's advisor, Polodyak, is saying that he is urging for a Easter ceasefire. There were plans for a ceasefire today. However, those all fell through. Even plans of a ceasefire sponsored by the UN, those fell through. Now the office of the president is asking for an emergency ceasefire. Today is Easter, a holy day and usually a festive day for Ukrainians, but it's a day that's wrought with death, actually. Multiple locations where civilians have been killed, and there are still civilians in Mariupol that are waiting to be evacuated alongside Ukrainian soldiers that are holed up in this last place that is still under Ukrainian control in the city of Mariupol on the Azov Sea. It's been a busy day here in Ukraine, in Dnipro, where we are about 35 kilometers east. A train station was hit in a town called Orlovchina. This is coming after yesterday. The mayor of Dnipro warned that Russia was trying to target these kinds of transportation infrastructure locations to prevent the easy movement of people, especially those who are trying to flee ongoing attacks in the eastern part of the country. And those attacks are continuing and were quite intense today. In Kharkiv, there was intense shelling. South of Kharkiv in Izium, there are reports that Ukrainian forces actually brought down a Russian jet. And then as you move south in the eastern part of the country, in Luhansk and Donetsk, there was intense shelling today. In Avdiivka, there were attacks. In Rubishna, there were attacks. And those attacks continued into the southern part of the country. In Kryvyi Rih, in Mykolaiv, in Zaporizhia, there were all attacks, some of them on civilian structure, civilian infrastructure, including another separate attack on a passenger train in Zaporizhia. The situation continues to escalate, even though Russian forces have consolidated their control over this land rift between Russia and the Crimean Peninsula, especially with the wrapping up of this operation in Mariupol and the Azovstal plant being the last place in Mariupol. However, the attacks in the country have intensified over the last 24 to 48 hours. Russian Ministry of Defense sources say that they've shot over 2,000 different kinds of projectiles into Ukraine over the last 48 hours. So people here are definitely concerned about what may be coming in the coming days.